Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into deepfakes. You sent over some excerpts from Wikipedia and a report from the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there.
It is. It is. For those who might be joining us for the first time, just a quick reminder, a deepfake is essentially, it's a type of synthetic media where AI is used. It's used to create these really realistic but fake videos or images.
Even audio.
And audio, yeah. So it's not just what you see, is
Yeah.
what you hear as well.
And that's what makes them so effective, right?
Yeah.
One of the things the DHS report really highlighted was how deepfakes play on our natural tendency to trust our senses.
Okay.
Our brains are kind of wired to believe what we see and hear, even if there are like subtle inconsistencies that we don't even consciously pick up on.
So even if something feels a bit off, our brains kind of just like fill in the gaps and we think it's real.
Yeah, it's like those optical illusions you see sometimes, where your brain sees something that isn't really there.
Right.
Deepfakes can play those same tricks on our perception and make us more susceptible to manipulation.
That's a little unsettling. So how do we protect ourselves from that?
Well, I think awareness is key. By understanding how deepfakes are made, the techniques used to create them,
Right.
we can become more, discerning consumers of media.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into the tech side a little bit. The DHS report mentioned that deepfakes aren't entirely new.
Right.
I mean, photo and video manipulation has
Yeah.
been around for ages.
Absolutely. I mean, think about those old photos where people were added or removed, or early Hollywood special effects.
Yeah.
What sets deepfakes apart is the use of AI, particularly deep learning algorithms.
Okay, so in your research, you put together this timeline of deepfake evolution, right?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of maybe like an early project that stands out?
Yeah, for sure. One really fascinating early example is this program called Video Rewrite from 1997. It used machine learning to synchronize lip movements
Oh, wow.
to a different audio track.
So even back then, they were experimenting with manipulating audio and video.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing to see how far the technology has come since then.
Yeah.
Another example that the Wikipedia article highlights is the Synthesizing Obama project.
Okay.
And in this project, researchers used AI to make this super realistic video of former President Obama speaking words he never actually said.
Wow.
So they took existing footage of him and manipulated it to make it look like he was saying something completely different.
Okay, so we've got manipulated audio, manipulated video. What sets today's deepfakes apart from these earlier examples?
Well, today's deepfakes are mainly created using this really powerful AI technique called generative adversarial networks, or GANs for short.
GANs. That sounds intimidating.
It might sound complex, but the concept is actually pretty cool. Imagine you've got like a forger trying to create fake paintings,
Okay.
and then you've got an art detective trying to spot the fakes.
Okay, yeah.
That's basically what's happening with GANs.
So you've got one AI trying to create the fake content and another AI trying to detect it.
Exactly. And they're constantly challenging each other.
Oh, wow.
And with each round, they both get better. The forger AI learns to create more realistic fakes, and the detective AI gets better at spotting them.
It's like a digital arms race.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's this constant back and forth between the generator and discriminator that makes deepfakes so difficult to detect because they're constantly evolving, they're becoming more sophisticated.
And from the DHS report, it seems like deepfakes aren't just limited to videos of people anymore.
You're absolutely right. One of the things that really surprised me in the report was how AI can be used to create deepfakes of other types of media, like audio, for example.
Oh, wow.
The report mentions a company called OpenAI that's developed these AI models that can generate music in the style of famous artists.
Oh, wow.
So imagine hearing new songs by Elvis Presley or Frank Sinatra, even though,
Even though they're gone.
they're no longer with us.
It really blurs the lines between what's real and what's not. But if we can create fake audio, what's to stop us from creating like fake text or even entire articles written by AI?
You've hit on a really critical point. The technology behind deepfakes is evolving so rapidly
Yeah.
that we're already seeing examples of AI-generated text that is incredibly difficult to distinguish from human-written content.
That raises some serious concerns. If practically any form of digital media could be susceptible to manipulation, how do we know what to trust?
That is the million-dollar question. It's why we need to be aware of this potential for manipulation and really develop strategies for how we discern,
Yeah.
truth from falsehood in this increasingly complex digital landscape.
And that's where things start to get a little unnerving, right? Because the potential for misuse is just huge. And from the DHS report, it sounds like there are some really concerning scenarios where deepfakes could be used for harm.
Absolutely. The report outlines several potential threats, from inciting violence and manipulating elections to corporate sabotage and even personal attacks.
Can you give us a specific example of how deepfakes could be used to incite violence?
Sure. Imagine a deepfake video of a political leader making inflammatory statements designed to provoke outrage and incite violence amongst their supporters.
Oh, wow.
The consequences could be devastating, even if people later find out the video was fake.
Yeah, the damage would already be done.
Exactly. That's what's so insidious about deepfakes. They can exploit these existing tensions and biases,
Yeah.
amplify them to really dangerous levels. And the DHS report also highlighted, the use of deepfakes in corporate sabotage.
Ah, how so?
Well, imagine a deepfake video of a CEO making damaging statements about their company. This could be used to manipulate stock prices or damage the company's reputation.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it might be too late to undo the harm, even after the truth is revealed.
So the potential consequences go far beyond just like personal embarrassment or inconvenience. We're talking about real-world harm
Absolutely.
to individuals and institutions.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. And this is why it's so crucial to have this conversation, to raise awareness about the potential dangers of deepfakes and empower people to be more critical consumers of the information they're seeing online.
Absolutely. We need to be informed. We need to be vigilant, especially in a world where it's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between what's real and what's fake.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad we're having this deep dive today.
Me too. Me too. This is definitely heavy stuff, but it's important. So let's continue exploring these threats and then maybe dive into some of the ways that people are fighting back against the negative impacts of deepfakes.
Sounds good to me. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Before we move on from the threats, I think we really need to address one of the most disturbing applications of this technology, and that's deepfake pornography.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The DHS report really brought this to light, highlighting how deepfakes can be used to create sexually explicit content without someone's consent. And research suggests that women are disproportionately targeted.
This is where I think the human cost of this technology becomes really clear, right? The report showed a case study about Noelle Martin, an Australian lawyer and activist who was a victim of this kind of abuse. Can you tell us more about her story?
Sure. Noel's story is a really powerful example of the devastating impact deepfake pornography can have. She was targeted by someone who used her images to create explicit content without her knowledge or consent. And this content was then shared online, causing her immense distress and really damaging her reputation.
It's horrifying to think that someone could be violated in such a way, and the fact that this is happening to countless individuals, mostly women, is incredibly concerning.
It is. And it highlights the need for stronger legal protections and more effective enforcement mechanisms to hold those who create and distribute this content accountable.
So it sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach to combat this issue.
Yeah.
What are some of the solutions being explored?
Well, on the tech side, there's a lot of promising research happening in the area of deepfake detection. One avenue is focusing on biometric markers, like the way people blink or move their mouths, or even how light reflects in their eyes.
So using AI to spot the subtle inconsistencies that give away a deepfake.
Exactly. As these detection algorithms become more sophisticated, the hope is that they can be integrated into social media platforms and other online spaces to help flag and remove potentially harmful content.
That's a good start. But what about preventing these deepfakes from being created in the first place? Is there any way to do that?
That's a much tougher challenge. But one idea being explored is this concept of digital provenance. Imagine a world where every piece of digital media have a tamper-proof record of its origin and any modifications made to it.
Like a digital fingerprint that verifies authenticity?
Precisely. This would make it much harder to pass off a deepfake as genuine, because you could trace its origins and see if any manipulations had occurred.
That sounds like a potential game changer. But how realistic is it to implement something like that on a global scale?
It's certainly a massive undertaking. It would require unprecedented collaboration between tech companies, governments, and international organizations.
But the potential benefits are enormous. It could revolutionize the way we trust and consume digital media.
So shifting the burden of proof from the viewer to the creator. Instead of relying on individuals to spot fakes, we'd be creating systems that make it easier to verify authenticity.
Exactly. And that's a crucial step in combating the liar's dividend, that chilling concept we discussed earlier. If we can reestablish trust in the digital realm by making it easier to verify what's real, then it becomes much harder for malicious actors to exploit doubt and spread misinformation.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got better detection, digital provenance, and hopefully increased awareness. But what about holding those who create and distribute these harmful deepfakes accountable? What role does the law play in all of this? The law has a critical role to play in addressing the harms caused by deepfakes, especially in cases like non-consensual pornography and other forms of abuse. You know, the DHS report mentions some laws that have already been passed, like the ones in California and Texas that we touched on earlier, but this is a rapidly evolving area.
What are some of the challenges that lawmakers are facing in trying to regulate deepfakes?
One of the biggest challenges is finding the right balance between protecting individuals from harm and upholding free speech rights. Deepfakes raise all sorts of legal questions about defamation, privacy, fraud, and even national security. But we also can't stifle legitimate uses of the technology.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where we safeguard against misuse without hindering innovation.
Exactly. And that's not always easy. The legal landscape is constantly shifting as new challenges emerge. For example, what happens when a deepfake is created for entertainment or satire, but then gets used for malicious purposes? Where does the liability lie?
It sounds like a legal minefield.
In many ways it is. It's something lawmakers and legal experts are grappling with right now. But the important thing is that there's active discussion and debate happening. It shows that people are taking the threat seriously and working to find solutions.
I'm glad to hear that. It seems like we're at a pivotal moment where we have the opportunity to shape the future of this technology.
We are. The decisions we make today about the laws we pass, the technologies we develop, and the conversations we have will determine whether deepfakes become a force for good or a tool for harm.
So what can our listeners do to be a part of the solution?
Well, first and foremost, be informed. Understand the technology, the risks, and the potential for misuse. Don't just passively consume information online. Be critical. If something seems off, question it. Do your own research. Look for verification from trusted sources.
So be a discerning digital citizen. Don't believe everything you see or hear.
Exactly. And if you see something that you think might be a deepfake, especially if it's being used to spread misinformation or harm others, report it to the platform or the relevant authorities.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Right? Silence only empowers those who would misuse this technology. If you're passionate about this issue, consider supporting organizations working to combat deepfake abuse or advocate for stronger legal protections.
We'll be sure to include links to some of those organizations in the show notes for this episode.
Great. And finally, remember that knowledge is power. Talk to your friends and family about deepfakes. Share what you've learned. The more we understand about this technology, the better equipped we'll be to navigate its complexities and mitigate its potential harms.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the technical details of how deepfakes are made to the potential threats they pose and the solutions being developed to combat them. It's a lot to process.
It is. But I think the key takeaway is that we're not powerless in the face of this challenge. We have agency. We can make choices that shape the future of this technology. It all comes down to awareness, education, and a commitment to using technology responsibly.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive, there's one more aspect of this conversation that I want to touch on: the emotional impact of deepfakes, particularly in cases of abuse.
That's an incredibly important point. It's easy to get caught up in the technical details and the potential societal implications, but we can't forget that behind every deepfake, there's a real person whose life can be profoundly affected.
The story of Noel Martin really drove that home for me. The emotional toll of being targeted in that way, the shame, the fear, the violation, it's heartbreaking.
It is. And it's crucial that we acknowledge and address this aspect of the conversation. We need to create a culture where victims feel safe coming forward and sharing their stories without fear of judgment or retaliation. We need to provide support and resources for those who have been harmed.
And we need to challenge the societal attitudes that condone or excuse this type of behavior.
Absolutely. It all comes back to the idea of digital citizenship, recognizing that we all have a responsibility to use technology ethically and respectfully. That means respecting others' privacy, being mindful of the content we create and share, and speaking out against abuse in all its forms.
It's about building a more empathetic and accountable online world.
Exactly. And while the technology behind deepfakes is complex, the choices we make as individuals are simple. Do we use this technology to build each other up or tear each other down?
That's a powerful question, and one that we all need to consider as we navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape. So, as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want to shift our focus to some of the more positive applications of deepfakes, because believe it or not, this technology does have the potential to be used for good.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the negatives.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to explore the other side of the coin. You mentioned that this technology does have the potential for good.
It absolutely does. Remember, deepfakes are a tool, and like any tool, they can be used for good or bad.
Right.
It all depends on the intention behind them.
The Wikipedia article mentioned how Disney is using deepfakes to de-age actors in their movies.
That's right. They've used this technology to create incredibly realistic depictions of younger versions of actors, allowing them to reprise iconic roles or tell stories that span decades. So, imagine the possibilities. We could see classic films reimagined with the original actors, or even create entirely new stories featuring beloved characters.
Yeah, it opens up a whole new world of creative opportunities. And it's not just limited to entertainment. Deepfakes have the potential to revolutionize education as well.
Oh, how so?
Well, imagine interactive history lessons where you can see and hear historical figures come to life. Instead of just reading about them in a textbook, you could have a virtual conversation with Abraham Lincoln or watch Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his I Have a Dream speech.
That would be amazing. It would definitely make learning more engaging and immersive.
It would, and it could help people connect with history on a much deeper level.
So we've got entertainment and education. What other positive applications are there?
Well, one area that I find particularly interesting is the potential of deepfakes to combat misinformation.
Wait, really? How can a technology that's known for creating fakes be used to fight against fake news?
It might seem counterintuitive, but researchers are exploring the use of deepfakes to create counter-narratives to propaganda and misinformation campaigns.
So instead of just debunking false information, we could use deepfakes to show people what a more accurate version of events might look like.
Exactly. It's about using the same tools that are being used to spread misinformation to actually promote truth and accuracy.
That's fascinating. It's like fighting fire with fire.
In a way, it is. But it's important to note that this is still a very new area of research, and there are ethical considerations that need to be carefully addressed. We need to ensure that these counter-narratives are clearly labeled and presented in a way that doesn't further confuse or mislead people.
That makes sense. We don't want to create more problems in the process of trying to solve existing ones. But it's exciting to see how this technology is being explored for such a wide range of applications, both positive and negative.
It is, and I think it highlights the importance of having these conversations, of exploring all facets of this technology so that we can make informed decisions about how we want to use it and regulate it moving forward.
Absolutely. So we've talked about entertainment, education, and even combating misinformation. What other areas are being explored?
One area that I think holds immense promise is the potential of deepfakes for accessibility. Imagine a world where anyone can create personalized audio or video content, regardless of their language or physical abilities.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Imagine someone who has lost their voice due to an illness or injury. Using deepfake technology, they could create a personalized voice avatar that allows them to communicate in their own voice, even if they're no longer physically able to speak.
That's incredible.
Or imagine someone who speaks a minority language and wants to share their story or message with a wider audience. Deepfakes could be used to create translations that are not only accurate, but also capture the nuances and emotions of the original speaker.
That's a really powerful application. It shows how this technology can be used to break down barriers and empower individuals.
It does. And I think that's what makes this whole conversation about deepfakes so fascinating. It's a reminder that technology is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool, and it's up to us to decide how we want to use it.
Well said. As we wrap up our deep dive into the world of deepfakes, I'm left with a sense of cautious optimism. There are definitely challenges and risks associated with this technology, but there's also incredible potential for good.
I agree. It's going to be a wild ride as this technology continues to evolve, but I'm excited to see how it unfolds. And I hope that by having these conversations, we can help shape the future of deepfakes in a way that benefits humanity.
Me too. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating and complex world of deepfakes.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the technologies shaping our world, the better equipped we are to navigate their complexities and make informed decisions about their use. Until next time, keep diving.